All right, guys, welcome back to another edition of the EFED Podcast interview series. Today we're joined by a legend in the game, Big Al Larcher, joining us on the show, EFED Podcast. We're joining Al. He was the handler behind Big Elwood Williams, the Malice Man Duke Williams, and the many iterations of Hoyt Williams. We're going to get into that and much more on the show. He was in feds like the CSWA, PCW, Prime, OSW, and the CWF. We're going to talk about that, much more. Al, welcome to the show. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing amazing. This is wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to reminisce and remember these things. I've forgotten like 90% of everything. So if I screw up names, federations, feuds, it's all in the past, man.
It's all good stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to have a lot of fun. And we're going to talk about all of these past feds that seem just, I started a Z-Fed podcast and I started really e-fedding. I mean, I started way back in 2000. I was a 12-year-old, but we're not talking about me today. Long story short, I really came into the circle in like 2014 and really got a hold of the game and where everybody was. And so I didn't know the CSWAs. I didn't know some of these feds. And ever since I started the podcast, it's almost 50% of what everybody talks about. It's crazy.
Yeah. It was a boom period. I mean, that's what it was. It was like everybody was doing it. It was popular, and then it just kind of faded.
It just like wrestling did it for a while.
Amen.
So let's talk about how you first got into wrestling. When did you become a pro wrestling fan, and who got you started?
Well, I never was great in school, especially English, which will be a common theme throughout this whole thing. And I was failing some grades. I was getting into some trouble, and I stole like $20 from my mom's purse. I used to stay up late at night. I didn't have any supervision as a kid. So I would stay up late at night and I'd watch Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heaton. And I'd be like, man, this is like amazing. This is a sport. This is what I think sports should be. And I loved that old school wrestling. So I stole $20 from my mom's purse and I would go down to the dime store and I would buy a bag of Doritos, a Mad magazine, a Cracked magazine, and then like one of the Bill Apter mags, and I would read about wrestling. And one time I ended up getting caught, and my mom, she was a snitch. She takes me down to the police station, and now I got to start seeing some shrink at the police station. And they're like, well, how can we get you to be better in school? And I'm like, well, I want to go see live wrestling. So it's probably about 86, 87. I remember going to the Rosemont Horizon, the famous Rosemont Horizon, just outside of Chicago. I saw Andre the Giant. I saw Hulk Hogan. But I just love the heels. Besides Hogan. I mean, I was a mark for Hulk Hogan. I think like every kid back then. Yeah. And but I loved Bobby Heaton, and I loved the Heaton family, and I loved Rowdy Piper. And just seeing that this thing was real, this thing existed, like that, Howard Finkel coming to the ring and the microphone being lowered and just the single spotlight, it was when wrestling was very basic. I'm like, yes, this is what I love. This is Rocky, it's a Rocky movie come to life. And I was hooked from there.
It's hard not to be. The spectacle is amazing.
Yeah. And then, so wrestling kind of evolved with me. When I was a teenager, the Attitude Era was happening. Yeah. And I was always right there at the Rosemont Horizon where, I was there the night Bret Hart tapped out, or Stone Cold Steve Austin passed out with the blood dripping, WrestleMania 13.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to the Hoosier Dome, WrestleMania 8, and saw, Macho Man win his second world title off of Flair. So, yeah, I was hooked. It was like a drug.
That's awesome. You got to experience 2 WrestleManias. Have you been into any since?
I went to the one in Dallas a couple years ago, and then I went to Wrestle Kingdom in Tokyo.
That's awesome. We got a couple questions about that, too, so we're going to get into that, too.
Sweet.
That's awesome. So talk to us about who some of your favorite wrestlers then and all time today.
Oh, man. I don't think there was anybody better than Bobby Heaton. And yes. I got into radio, and these guys, they weren't doing the shoot type stuff yet, but they were still kind of doing local radio, and they would talk. So I got to interview Bobby Heaton, and, I found out he grew up right down the street from Wrigley Field here in Chicago. And I always had a connection with him. I always felt like, he was a Weasley kind of guy who could talk his way out of things. And I could relate. So, I was never a fighter. So I was like Rowdy Piper, Hulk Hogan, The Stone Cold era. I mean, I was hooked. I was all there for Stone Cold. For some reason, I really liked like Bad News Brown. And then recently, I mean, Kenny Omega. I love the New Japan stuff. Naito, Yano, all those guys. It's hard to pick favorites because everybody's always I've always liked the whole show, and everybody contributes. I mean, the women now are incredible.
Yep.
Even the little fellas are good. I don't know what you politically correctly call them these days, but everybody contributes to what is wrestling, and that's what I like. I've always liked the commentators too, and I thought Gorilla Monsoon was great. I've always thought Jim Ross was a little overrated, but I mean he's been there my entire life, so
yep. The voice of your childhood, or I guess Bobby Heenan and them would be.
Yeah.
So you mentioned New Japan. You mentioned Yano. Yano doesn't get enough credit on the show. No. Never gets a shout on this show. I love him.
The man's a comedic genius. I don't think people understand like how funny he is. So I studied at Second City. I think I have a handle on humor, and I generally hate humor in wrestling. Like it just pisses me off. It's annoying, but I can't hate Yano. Like
so good.
Yeah, amazing.
Oh, yeah. Every time I watch his matches, I'm doubling over. It's so funny. All right, so talk about e-fetting. Let's talk about the hobby, why we're here. How did you find this weird world of e-fetting?
It started with those damn magazines, and they had ads for like you could create a wrestler and mail something in. You send somebody money. I don't know. They had this thing figured out. They were making money off this thing before we started doing it for free, which I've never understood. We went completely backwards on it, but. You would send in a check and something would happen. I don't know because I never was able to do it. But the concept was always in my head, like, I want to do this. And I ran my own federation with my wrestling figures. I had a card system. I had rankings.
Nice.
I had a dilemma once where Robin the Boy Wonder won the world title, but I had a action figure that came free with a Burger King meal, with a Burger King kids meal, and it was embarrassing. He looked terrible. He couldn't be my champion. So I went to KB Toys and I found a Nightwing figure, and that solved everything. He became kind of like a Shawn Michaels.
Nice, evolved.
Yeah, Chapel from Spawn was his like Diesel. The whole thing worked. But one day I was over at my buddy's house, and the internet was still a new thing. It was like Claire Pepsi and the internet, and I'm like, I got to find out about this. So I start searching, and I believe it was the CSWA, which I never really was active in. Like, I threw that on there because it always meant something because it was the first time I saw e-wrestling. Yeah. And it wasn't even like the internet yet. It was like a sub server or something. And we joined up and we emailed some guy and we're like, hey, can we join your stable? And he's like, sure. And we're like, we're in a stable. We like created this character, but I didn't have a computer. So like, all that went out the window. And then like, I don't know, 94, 95, I finally got a computer and it was all I wanted to do with a computer. I mean, I didn't even care about porn at this point. I mean, back then it was like one of those stripping pens. It was so slow to see anything. So e-wrestling was where it was at. I would go on and I would read all the dirt sheets and figure out what the screw job was all about. And then it started moving into e-wrestling. I found a federation, created a character. It was Big Elwood, which my AOL screen name was always Big Elwood 9. Mm-hmm. And I never realized it had like a dirty connotation to it. Like that, Big Elwood, like people thought something that wasn't because it was just simply a wrestling character. Because my friend's dad used to call me Elwood from the Blues Brothers because I was kind of like a wayward kid. So yeah, I created this character, which I'm pretty sure Juice Robbins recently ripped off when he went full-blown Blues Brothers. But I created like this Blues Brothers character, and it flopped. It was terrible. But whoever the fat head was at the time, and again, I'm terrible with names. I'm not going to remember anything, and I feel really bad about that. But he told me, he started like, hey, why don't you do something when you go to the ring? Write that you're dancing. And so I started writing this. And then I went to another federation, which might have been PCW. And that was with Ron. And he started like, here's what you need to do. You're funny, write humor. And it just started evolving from there. And next thing you know, I was hooked. And I always, was like a upper mid-card guy.
So you found e-fedding, you got right into it, and it was role play feds that you were into?
Yeah. And this was a big problem with me and my career and my vision of what e-wrestling should be and what it was and what it became was I was really into the trash talking, and I missed a lot of school growing up because, again, I didn't have any parents. I was like Peter Pan, and there was no structure. So I didn't pay attention in school. I never really learned English and structure, and to this day I struggle with commas. I struggle with the rules of grammar. So back then you just wrote a script and you just made fun of people, and I was good at that. I could make fun of people, and as it evolved into stories, I realized I had to change and I had to learn, and I started evolving into stories. But then by the time I got to Prime, it started becoming something where it was guys were telling their own stories that had nothing to do with wrestling. They were just writing, and it was
Yeah.
about being the best writer. And I was never
Mhm.
going to be the best writer. I was going to be the best. I could be the best guy in wrestling, but I couldn't be the best writer. And so
It
I always
became
kind of,
character development where they
yeah,
started talking about their lives and their wives and their day jobs and so on and so forth.
absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I also consider the dark period of wrestling.
Yeah. Which,
It's just not my style.
and it was when it was the most popular. I mean, it was
Yeah.
crazy. I don't understand why those people didn't just go and join some kind of writing competition. There's plenty of that. Write
Plenty.
poetry. God's sakes, the world needs more poetry. I wanted some
But
wrestling.
no, they joined e-wrestling, and yeah, so they took over with these 10,000 word novels.
Yeah. And I tried competing, and I did okay. I won a world title in every federation I'd ever committed to full time. Um,
Nice.
I never had long runs. I always thought I should have been more. I was always that guy. In hindsight, I realized I couldn't be,
Yeah.
because of my limitations. But I always wanted to write the best segs on the card. I wanted to have the thing people were talking about coming out of the shows. So I would lose a lot of matches because I couldn't compete with the role playing, but I could kick your ass in the segs. I could make sure that I could do something relevant that made the show interesting, which is what we were all paying attention to. So,
Yeah. Win, lose, or draw, you were adding more to the show than just role plays, and you
yeah,
were creating a character, developing in a different style, something that would be on TV, not away from the arena.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, very good. So you got into that, and then what happens next? You're in these feds, and these people start writing these novels. You say you can't compete. You entertain the troops, or do you bounce out?
I always stuck with it. I mean, I was always a scrappy dude, and the Fed heads realized that the shows were important,
Mm-hmm.
and my contribution to the shows were helping the federations grow, and it was what people were talking about coming out of
Yeah.
shows. And I tried to make my characters as real as possible. Duke Williams, I never was really into a lot of reading. So a lot of guys, they had women, they had a lot of influences reading books and authors. I was really into songwriters and specifically the outlaw movement and country music of the 70s. And so I learned listening to words from like Jerry Jeff Walker and Billy Joe Shaver and these guys who could make a 3-minute song emotional and mean something. And I wanted to create a character that embodied those guys. And that's what Duke Williams was. He was a whiskey drinking, hell raising, uh, but very flawed. I always wanted my characters to be flawed and broken. And he was that. He was a drunk. He wasn't PC. He had problems. Um, and then it eventually moved to his son, Hoyt Williams, who was the opposite of him, who hated his father because his father was a wrestler and a drunk, where he believed he was the son of God, but it was a mental disorder. He truly was breaking, he was schizophrenic. And that all that stuff was important to me because to me, writing was an escape. As I said, I didn't have a lot of structure going up. My mom was crazy, and my father wasn't involved in my life. So, you know, my mom was bipolar, and there would be good times and bad times. And my way to escape was to write. And and this hobby really helped me through a lot of that growing up because when I was 21, my mother ended up taking her life, and it was right in a peak in my e-wrestling career where I was starting to get title shots, and I was able to escape that emotion and try to make people laugh while still having this dark, horror that's going on in my own life and being able to express it through character work. So, I mean, that's what e-wrestling was for me. And yeah, it was fun bouncing, different federations and different characters and having this father-son relationship that I didn't really even have in my own life, and trying to explore that. And yeah, I mean, that was the basis of my characters.
It's great that you could use e-wrestling in that for that type of therapy almost.
Yeah.
And obviously, very sorry to hear about your mother. That's terrible.
Yeah, 20 years ago. We moved on.
Yeah, yeah. But it's good that e-wrestling was an outlet for you and gave you the creative freedom. And even through all of that, you stuck with the hobby?
Yeah. It was, like I said, it was a release at that point because I needed it. And, I made a lot of friends in e-wrestling. And I can't remember any damn names, but I mean, people still hit me up, and I remember them, and I remember where they were and the characters they wrote. And I remember I fought really hard to become a world champion in Prime, and I think the guy's name is Jeff Ward, Cswa, I think he wrote. Good dude, better writer than I ever will be, but he was one of these guys who would write his character, and it existed like in this world, and my character is just doing everything I can to try to write to get under this guy's skin, and like his wife died or something, he did this deep story about his wife dying, so my character went to the graveyard, dug her up, and stole the wedding ring. But like, he barely responded to that, and that was always my frustration with the sport. And, yeah,
he wasn't reading your stuff.
He was reading it. He just wasn't yes anding.
Yeah, wasn't selling it, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you're in Prime, and talk about some of your world title runs. You mentioned a few of them. Talk about which ones were like the biggest ones to you. What was most exciting moments in e-wrestling for you?
Man, I think it had to have been Prime because I really had to work for it. At that point, there were so many great writers in the hobby, and I wanted to be able to stand out, and I wanted the credit of being able to say I was a world champion there. And I ended up beating Jeff. I ended up winning that feud, and I think it was more based on my seg work than probably the role plays that went head to head. And then right out of that, I get put into a feud with a dude who just didn't like me, and there was drama backstage, and we've worked it out since. I've met the guy, and he's a good dude, but he was very much into the principle of how can you have a guy who's a world champion who doesn't know where a comma goes, as opposed to the content of the work. And in some ways he had a point. And I remember there was a big backstage drama and a blow up, and I think I won that feud with him, and I don't even remember losing the belt. I mean, I must have at some point. And then I might have flaked out because that happens a lot in e-wrestling. I mean, that's
sure, you lose the belt and you leave.
That's it. That's right. I'm done. I'm out of here. There's nothing left.
All right. Yeah, I've had enough of this place. After holding this championship for this long. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. So you flaked out of Prime eventually, and so where do you?
At that point, I think that was pretty much where it all ended. Yeah, I mean, that was the Hoyt Williams run. Prior to that was PCW and Duke Williams, and I mean that was probably the most fun I had at e-wrestling because it hadn't yet gotten too serious. It was moving into more of the writing aspect of it. There was a guy, Ivan Stanislav. He was the big Russian. And I was Duke Williams, like the All-American. And I wanted a feud with him so bad. But the Fed head just was like, you guys are different characters. Like, he's very serious. You write comedy. And, like, it never happened. And that just crushed me. So, like, you start understanding your role and your vision of how people see you and your place, because it is important. I mean, there's only so many world champions. There's only so many guys who can be on the top. And I think anybody who writes, especially competitively, you want to get to that place. And, nobody wants to be the carpenter. in anything. And now that I'm older, I respect the dudes who just play the game just to play it. They don't care where they are on the card. They're just out there having fun. And that's what I want it to be, and that's where I wanted to get to. But my ego got the best of me at times. So
and that happens, especially when you are at the top of the game. You are at the top of the Fed that you're in for so long, and you're doing well, and you build it up, and then eventually you lose it, and you're like, well, now what?
Right. Where do you go from there?
Well, very good. So you mentioned all your characters; they're all Williams. You mentioned to me prior to the call how that came about. You want to touch on that?
Yeah. So Duke Williams started with, I wanted to take Elwood Williams and like expand on a new character, and I wanted to base him on country music. And I was always a big Hank Williams Jr. fan. I loved Bocephus. I loved the hat. I loved the shades. I loved the beard. I loved the look. I loved the diamond rings. I liked, he was cocky. Everything about him I wanted to put into a wrestling character. And I didn't actually see Dr. Death Steve Williams wrestle, but at that point in my life, but I'd read magazines about him. And when I originally created a character for the mail-in EFED that never happened, I went through the dictionary one day and spent hours trying to find a word to be the name of my wrestler, and I came up with Malice. So I'm like, well, that's a badass name. So I'm like, well, but I don't want that to be my name. And in hindsight, I mean, I think it makes for a cool like female wrestler name more than a dude, even though Malice could go either way. But anyways, so I wanted a guy who was based on somewhere between Jerry Jeff Walker, Chris Christopherson, Dr. Death Steve Williams, and Hank Jr. And I'm like, well, Williams is a common theme here. So we're going to go with Williams. And I believe the character was he was a brother of Hank Williams. He was a half brother of Hank Williams Jr., who was a bodyguard for Chris Christopherson. And somebody tried to stab Chris Christopherson, and Duke Williams snapped the guy's neck, and Chris Christopherson said, wow, that's a Malice man. And that's where the nickname came from for the character. So
amazing.
Yeah, I started writing role plays based on songs. I would take a song and then I would just write, a character based on the story. And that's where Duke came from. I mean, his finisher move was Whiskey Bent and Hellbound, which is a Hank Jr. song. And the finisher was the Oklahoma Stampede, which was Dr. Death Steve Williams' finisher. So, I mean, that all kind of, that's where I stole it, because people steal everything. And so I love that character. It was my favorite character ever. I had a lot more success with Hoyt Williams, but Duke Williams was where it was at. And then Ron closed the Federation, and I don't know, some shit happened, as always with e-wrestling. And he started up, I think it was OSW, and he wanted a completely new federation. And if you were an old handler from the old federation coming to the new federation, you had to have a unique character that was brand new. It could not be the character you had in the past. And I was pissed. I was like, I want to be Duke Williams. I'm not done with this story. So I started thinking, and Johnny Cash just released one of the Rick Rubin albums with the song Personal Jesus on it, the Depeche Mode song. He was covering that. And I listened to it over and over and over, and I'm like, man, Personal Jesus. And I've always had kind of this love-hate relationship with Christianity. I went to Catholic school as a kid, but I kind of fell out of faith, and with my mom's passing and the way it happened, I kind of was at odds with the Bible, and I was kind of at odds with Christianity. And I've always seen, even though I'm a faithful person and I do believe in a higher power, I've always kind of found certain things of the church to be kind of a con. And I really wanted to kind of expose that. And I'm like, what if Duke Williams had a kid who he hated his father? His father was just some guy, but he was raised by his mother, who was a church woman, who ended up getting murdered by a street gang. And it somehow snapped in his psyche, and he started believing that he was God. And I always tried to make it so, like, when Hoyt Williams in a segment would walk on water, I would make sure to write in there that, like, you could obviously see there was some kind of plastic holding him up. I always tried to make sure that the element of he wasn't a character, he wasn't a vampire, he wasn't in this absurd world where things that were happening, him floating through the sky or performing miracles, couldn't be explained as wrestling. But I started coming up with more and more ideas, like, the Bible said your body is a temple, and I'm a fat dude, so I'm like, man, Hoyt's going to be obsessed with fitness. He's going to come to the ring and he's going to make the fans do jumping jacks for Jesus. He's going to despise anybody who's out of shape. He's going to perform miracles. He's going to bring the good book with him, a golden Bible he could hit people over the head with. He has the ability where if, he needs to touch the referee's head, he could, like a faith healer, he could touch the referee's head and make the referee pass out. Like, there were just so many wonderful heel tactics. I'm like, oh, this is it. This is the guy. And then I started developing that from there. And then later I was able to bring Duke Williams back into the story and try to make that relationship real. And yeah, so that was kind of the journey of the characters. And then any character I've ever tried outside of the Williams family has failed. And I've joined, in the middle of the night, I've been stoned before, and I'll be like, you know what, I'm going to join a federation. Let's make a beach bum based on Jimmy Buffett become a wrestler, and like, it fails. It's terrible. So yeah, the only luck I've ever had is with the Williams family. So
I like it. And Hoyt, is it Hoyt Williams, who had many iterations?
Yeah, there were different versions of I mean, it was always the same. He was always the son of God, but sometimes the con was more, about making money, and
it changed from town to town.
Yeah, he had his manager Mary with her cherry, who was, the Virgin Mary, who, was, a sweet lady, but she was the Virgin Mary, and she was able to kind of like keep him focused on wrestling, and he wanted to branch out and, sell holy water, and he started becoming a TV preacher. As he gained popularity in wrestling, he found ways where he was able to make money, and the character was driven by money and gold. And eventually, I ripped off the $1 Million Man. I thought, man, I can't be the world champion, but I could be God's champion. So one day, a giant fist from heaven came down and handed Hoyt Williams the world title, and it was God's title. And oh, no. straight up rip off of the $1 Million Man's $1 Million title, same concept, And I went and I would defend God's championship, and I would say I was better than the champion, which, it was tongue in cheek. Some people took offense to it. Here's a guy just trying to be champion by creating his own. But I mean, it was a joke.
It's a gimmick. Yeah.
Exactly. So
that's awesome, though. That's hilarious. I love the con. I love the changing the con from fed to fed. That's incredible stuff. That's commitment to a character.
It is, and I love commitment. I studied at Second City. And I did a lot of improv, and, commitment to character is very important to E-Federation, to E-Wrestling, and to writing. And I love having that. And, there's other great, Lindsay Troy has always been that same character. And she's done amazing work with that and keeping it fresh. And there's a couple people who've done it. And it is fun being able to go 10, 20 years as a character. And I tried returning about a year ago, and I had this brilliant idea because I was really into the Japanese wrestling, and I just came back from Tokyo, and I started becoming obsessed with Japan. I started learning Japanese, and I'm like, well, obviously Hoyt Williams has been in Japan for the last 15 years, and now he's coming back to the States. So I get in the Federation, and I realize, like, everybody is writing this exact same character. Like, everybody has done time in Japan now. So it was like 100%. So ununique. Yeah. I just was like, oh man,
that's amazing.
What am I gonna do?
So you tried to come back, and obviously it didn't stick. But when you do decide to come back, let me know.
I want to.
I'm starting a Fed based on the 80s. It's going to be a blast. You got to create a brand new character, same as you just said. prior. It was funny.
I'm in. Oh yeah.
All right, man. So you finished up your run then with your recent return, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And since then, just you dabble from the side, or you watch from the sides and want to come back, but it's just not working out yet.
Yeah, I mean, my problem in the past was I was always really bad. I want everybody to pay attention to me, and I was bad at reciprocating. And so that mindset has changed. I flipped the
That's
script on that.
common in e-fetting. It's strange how
It
you
is.
mention
It is.
that.
It's the downfall of it, where it's like, look at me, but I don't know if I'm going to read your stuff. And
Exactly.
so I want to go somewhere where I could commit to like being a part of a community and reading other people's work. And it's funny you mentioned an 80s federation, because I've tried once or twice to run federations. I think I ran Prime for like 2 weeks. But my limitations with grammar, just it was too much. But I wanted to create, and I got a roster. I had everything ready to go. I wanted to create a wrestling federation that was based about like 1975 Texas,
There you
and
go.
it was going to be. I had this giant. I created this character who was the world champion, who was this giant. He was like 7'5", just a big Texan, big hillbilly who was getting old. He was like 43, and I wanted the federation to start and to see who the good players were, to figure out who was going to beat the giant. I mean, similar concept to Hogan at WrestleMania 3. I wanted to figure out who my Hulk Hogan was, and everybody was like, well, you're handling the giant, like that's not fair. And I kept like, no. In the
He's
first
gonna lose.
pay-per-view, he's losing, so I can hand off the title. He's going to move to the commentary booth. Like, it's all worked out, and nobody understood the concept, and that failed. And wrestling has been a lot of failure in my life, to be honest. Just one failure after another.
Writing down that idea. I'm going to try that again in 2021. No, that's awesome, though. So that covers your e-wrestling career then?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. I did win a big tournament, or second place in a big tournament over in PTC, the community. They had a big tournament, and that was near the end of my run in e-wrestling, and I had to write a story. And people always told me, they're like, hey, you write like Hunter S. Thompson. And I go, I don't know who that is. I don't read. And I was unemployed at the time. And so every day I would walk to Borders Books, and I would buy a cup of coffee, and I would just sit and read books. And I read a lot of nonfiction. I do read. It's just nonfiction. Like, I'm reading Classy Freddie Blassie's autobiography right now. And then I got a book on the concepts and evolution of plays in the NFL. Like, that's the kind of stuff I read. I don't necessarily read fiction. Well, I decided, and drugs entered my life at this point. So I would get stoned, and I would walk down to the bookstore, and I would buy a cup of coffee, and I would read. I read Hunter S. Thompson, and I'm like, I get this guy. I understand the comparison. I'm nothing like him, obviously. I mean, he's a real writer. I'm just a guy who's e-wrestling, but I get why there was this comparison. So I started trying to steal his style, and I decided, a buddy of mine couldn't drive, needed to stay in a hotel for some conference. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to get a room in the hotel, and I'm going to stay there. And I'm going to take it from my character's point of view of what it's like living on the road and staying in these hotels. And it just happened. I got really high, and I just wandered around the hotel, and I went to the basement, and there was like a group of cross-dressers who were like hooking up in the basement. Like, it was just like something that was happening down there. So like I wandered into that room, and I'm like, well, this is weird. Like, who knew this happened? I didn't know this happened at hotels, but sure enough. And then there was like, I went upstairs, and then there was like a con going on where people were selling like a timeshare. And I'm like, wow, this is interesting. And like, I just started writing. I had a little notebook. I just wrote everything down. And like, there was a barber shop in the hotel. I'm like, oh, the wrestler's going to go get a haircut at the and he obviously knows the barber, because he goes to this hotel all the time. And I wrote this really massive like role play. It was like 10 pages, which was a hell of a lot for me. Like, it took like 2 weeks, and I ended up winning a tournament with that, or second place. I don't remember. And yeah, so that was like the pinnacle of my role playing or writing. And yeah. So that's it.
Well, that's a good summation. I mean, you had a good run between, when would you say?
94 to about 14.
That's a hell of a run. It's
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah, that's crazy to think. It's
Right?
crazy to think about. It's like that's why I can't go into detail with things because like it was so long and so many people and so many good times and so many bad times and I
So
probably
many
remember the
feds and
drama more than anything.
well,
Man, I had a
good. We
way
can
of
get into
pissing.
that too.
I pissed everyone off. Like I somehow have the ability to piss people off, and it happened in e-wrestling. So I'm sorry to all those people if I've ever pissed you off.
You said
Hey,
everybody in wrestling. All right. Al, it's time for the questions from the crowd. Are you ready for these?
now I'm nervous.
And you haven't seen these
No, I have
as
no idea
far
what's coming.
as far as I know, yeah. All right. Let's go. These are from our Discord over at the EFED podcast community. Check it out. Up first, we've got at EWT's best customer. It's Meg. Is your Twitter handle a parody of the BSB song?
BSB. What the hell's the B? Like I'm a DJ. I don't know what a BSB is.
That's Backstreet Boys. You don't know that?
Oh man, damn. Yes, it is. Larger than life. Yes, it absolutely
See?
is.
Man,
The kids, they abbreviate everything.
that's teamwork. I like it. What advice would you give to an up and coming handler in the game today?
Immerse yourself in everybody's work. Like, know what's going on. Contribute to the show. But don't burn yourself out, man. Like if you hate match writing and you don't have to match right and they
Don't
tell
do
you
it.
you really need to match right, don't do it, man. It's going to ruin your life. Like match writing is destroyed lives, not just careers, lives. There've been divorces and horrible.
From match training, I like it. Especially ones that the right person doesn't go over. Up next is John Thompson at TW Combat. What do you feel is the most satisfying moment of your e-wrestling career?
Satisfying. I don't know, man. Like getting a role play in on time with like 5 minutes left. Like there's nothing more satisfying than that because everyone feels like you've waited. They feel like you're sandbagging. Like, man, you're just waiting for the deadline. But no, like you're somebody who procrastinates for a living and you wait to last minute to write and then you're trying to proofread and you don't even have time for that and you don't know how to use grammar anyways. So screw it. Anytime I won a world title was pretty satisfying. Yeah. I mean, I would go to Red Lobster and eat a lobster afterwards.
That's a celebration.
Hell yeah.
All right. What do you feel is your most disappointing moment in the hobby?
Probably like being a dick on the out of character like message boards. Like, I was young. I was like 20. I was pissed off at the world. I could have been a better person at times. So I think I'm disappointed in myself on that. I've never was disappointed in a loss or somebody being better than me. I feel like I could have learned more and studied a lot more of writing during the time I was doing it. Like I could have gotten like a how-to book, So I'm disappointed in that. Yeah.
That's a great answer. And from the first time someone's pointed back at themselves as a handler and said, "Hey, I could have done this better."
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's needed. It really is.
What is another hobby of yours other than our wonderful hobby of e-wrestling?
Well, I'm one of the best daily fantasy football players in the country. I've won two.
Won serious money.
I've won some. Yeah, like I went to Wrestle Kingdom on winning some fantasy football. I would have won the Millie Maker twice if I was in that. I just didn't have the funds to play the Millie Maker. But I've won 2 tournaments with over like 400,000 people. I get fantasy football from the daily aspect and the year long. I'm getting better at that. So, but that's a true hobby. You have to, I'm looking at numbers constantly. I'm reading books. I'm reading game theory. I'm reading how the stock market and poker correlate to fantasy football. It doesn't even make sense. But my hobbies are definitely, I guess, football in general, but fantasy football, gambling, and video games. I'm nonstop gaming.
That's awesome. Good question. Thanks, John, for the questions. Up next is, hi, Paul. It's Paul from CSWA. What's your favorite CSWA memory not directly involving your character?
Well, see, now that's a problem.
Not getting in would probably be it.
Yeah, CSWA, like I said, it never was a federation I was truly in.
It's how you found e-wrestling.
It was how I found e-wrestling. I had a character in there. It might have been one show, but I didn't have internet. I joined years later, and they had a very slow pace, very methodical. I think they did a show every year. I think they did one show. They did half a show, and the role play deadline was like 6 months. And but it was amazing. Like, I get it now. That sounds like amazing to me. But I was in a federation where I was grinding and constantly, you had to role play every week. You had to match write every week. You had to write segs every week. It was like 20, 30 hours. And then to go into something that was so slow paced, I never really got into it to have any memories of it.
Other than that stable that you were jumped in.
Yeah. I emailed the dude and I got into the stable. It was great. Yes. That's how it all started.
All right. All right. Who is your favorite handler in the game to work with?
Oh, man. I think his name is Tony Kelly. He's some Irish kid. Yeah, he was good. There were a lot of people. Lindsay was fun. This guy Matt was good, but again, I'm just giving like first names. There's no context to it. So. I like somebody who. This was when AIM was a thing, and you go on the AOL Instant Messenger, and you'd be like, "Hey, man, you want to do a seg? What do you say? Let's just do it. We're backstage right now. Why don't you start?" And just literally improvising a seg, just live on AOL, just copying and pasting. And then going back and be like, you know what? It'd be funny if I said this, and just doing it. Like I said, I eventually got into Second City, and a lot of it came from that. That's where I learned how to improvise, was through AOL Instant Messenger and writing segs with people. And anybody who approached it that style, I got along with and I enjoyed working with, or people who knew how to get crazy and had ideas like. Hey, why don't you attack me and let's do this? Where there was a little bit of angling, even if it was a role play federation. You could still angle. You could still tell stories within the shows, even if the final outcome of the feud is decided by a role play. Like, you got to work with people. And anybody who's willing to do that was cool with me.
Is there any character type or role play style that turns you off immediately?
Yeah, long ones about people who are, I don't know what they're doing in their life. They're going to the shopping mall. They're doing anything but wrestling. That always drove me crazy. And then, yes, your grammar's perfect and you tell lovely stories, but my God, man, it's wrestling.
It is wrestling. At the end of the day, that's what we're all doing. Fantasy wrestling.
Still real to me, man. Still real
to me, damn it. At Seth is Burns, what are Duke and Hoyt Williams up to these days?
I've killed Duke Williams like 3 times. Like, there's been multiple role plays where he's gone, where Hoyt's gone to the grave and written, it's talked to his dad. But then I want to bring him back and I'll be like, screw it. No one's paying attention. So I'll just pitch the pan and he comes back. So Duke he's down on a beach somewhere. He's in Fort Myers Beach right now. He's not wearing a mask. He could give 2 shits about wearing a mask right now. He's walking into the bar with the mask off, and he's getting a double shot of whiskey, and he's just laying on the beach, soaking in the sun and looking at the women.
There you have it.
Hoyt is probably he's definitely playing a lot of cryptocurrency, and right now he's trying to win an NBA Top Shot at the basketball crypto chain thing that's going on now, and that craze. He's trying to get a top 10 LeBron James crypto card from NBA Top Shot, and he's trying to convince the world still he's the son of a god.
Who would win in a fight, Hoyt Williams or his brother Jesus H. Christ?
Well, who's booking? Like if the God upstairs has got it, then yeah, I imagine
it's a squash match.
Yeah, Hoyt's winning. Hoyt's winning. If I'm booking it, then I think Duke wins.
There you go. At MDG, it's Warren. Prime versus CSWA in a fight to the death. Winner gets all. The fish fund they could ever hope for. Who you got?
The fish fund. Oh man, I mean, I was a Prime guy. Like, I know somebody took Duke Williams and put him on a show as an announcer. Like, and everybody wrote for him, and it might have been Prime. Like, I was Prime from like day one. Like, I was in that federation for like 8 years. So,
That's awesome.
I had, like I said, I did maybe a show. I made an appearance in CSWA. I respected the hell out of it, and the fact that it just kept going, and the writers are great. I always got the vibe it was an older federation, like older handlers, and I was one of the older players in the game. So like I imagine those guys are like in their 50s now. I'm in my 40s, so
They're
I just
probably
always
still
had
playing.
more.
Don't kid yourself.
Yeah, no, they're still going. I always had a vibe that they were just older guys and good writers, but Prime was so much fun. Prime was young, it was youthful, it had vibrance. The stories were great, the writers were great, the booking was fantastic. It was fair. There were like 4 years without any drama, which is just amazing in e-wrestling. But it all falls apart eventually.
That is amazing. Yeah, no, it does fall apart. At Billy Fields, Billy in the Field. Any 2024 presidential aspirations?
Oh, I mean, I'm of age at this point. And, I'm thinking. I'm seriously considering maybe myself running. But if not,
get some funds.
if not me, I'd like, like Willie Nelson. Like, let's give Willie a shot.
What would
Or
Willie
just
do?
yeah, like if Prince was still alive, I'd say Prince. But I mean, unfortunately, one Super Bowl and you're out. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not as passionate about politics as I once was, and I'm more in the let's all get along phase of my life now. You go to Burning Man once or twice, and it just changes you. So, you know,
Up next is at Children Play Nice or Else. That's Lynn's. Wildest PTC memory or the fondest?
oh man. I like doing the little radio shows. We did those, and just people calling in and just having like this weird communication with these people that are handlers, and it was real, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, that's got to be it. That's got to be it. And just in general, it was just an escape. So always good time.
And it's cool that you did that, and you'd obviously done the DJ thing in real life and worked with radio and different things.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to rebrand Hoyt Williams as, I'm going to murder this one, Kayushishu, the social justice warrior in 2019?
Yes. So again, Hoyt Williams went back to Japan, and that's why he disappeared from the States. He got shamed out of he got canceled. The cancel culture got him, and he goes to Japan to escape it. because the cancel movements in wrestling. So he goes there, he becomes a star, and he finds himself at the grave of Ricky Dojan. I can't think right now. Smoke's getting me. And he realizes he needs to come back and save America. And the only way to do it is to now be the social justice warrior and just get everything canceled and just make sure everything is perfectly PC and that we're all spiritual and whole inside. And then like within 2 weeks, it was back to Hoyt Williams because I couldn't do it. I couldn't
change the gimmick up that much.
No.
I like it though. So what made you, nope, that's the one I just read. Favorite NJPW show that you've ever been to? New Japan.
Well, I've only been to Wrestle Kingdom. Yeah, I figure if you go large. And man, that was life-changing. Like, just to be, the foreigner in the foreign land and being there, and I still got to laugh. Like, Cheeseburger was in the ring, and everybody was yelling, "Cheeseburger! Cheeseburger!" So I go, "Double cheeseburger!" And everyone just starts laughing. So, like, I got my pop in the Tokyo Dome, so that's all I wanted. But that country is so amazing. Like, the whiskey, like you just start with it. Like, they don't have marijuana, so it's like, well, what am I going to do for a couple weeks? But there's such a great whiskey culture, and they love getting drunk. And I went to New Year's Eve. I'm like, hell, I'm in Tokyo. Like, if I'm in New York, I'd go to Times Square. Let's go down to wherever the hell they have their Times Square. So I go down to Shibuya Crossing, and it's New Year's Eve, and everybody's got their Coca-Cola hats on, and the ball drops, and everybody cheers, and everyone's hugging, and you're in this 12 hours before everybody else because I wanted to be first. So the hell with Americans. And so you get your party on, and then everyone's stuck downtown, so you start dispersing, and there's like these weird fish shops, and like we went to the third floor of a fish restaurant, and we go, and somebody just puked fish. And there were fish heads in the urinal. They're like vomited up fish heads, and it's New Year's Eve, and like people are stumbling through the streets. And then it's like 4 a.m, and there's people falling over drunk in the streets, and the cops are trying to get them to go home. And in America, in Chicago, if you fall drunk into a cop, they take a billy club and they throw you in the back of a thing. The police there were helping these drunk guys up, and they would fall over again, and they would all help them up again and saying thank you. And like, if the police were polite, and it was like, oh my God, this, and the trains ran on time, and the food, like even McDonald's was amazing. And then they love wrestling, and I love wrestling, and like, I just want to be there. But then there's probably the reality of it's vacation, and everywhere's nice when you're on vacation. So
absolutely, especially a foreign land. I'm going to sneak this little story in here because it seems like a good time. I was in Chicago visiting, hanging out with my good friends, Mr. Andy Murray, Stevie, we'll call him Kendricks too. And we go to this bar, and we're hanging out with you. We meet you, and you're the DJ at the bar, spinning the tunes, and we got you to play. What the hell was it? We got you to play a song that was AC Romero's theme over there when we went to the event.
Oh,
I can't even remember now.
Yeah.
I can't even remember now. But we got you to play a song, and we all popped for it because we were drunk and hammered and wrestling fans. And then we noticed we're sitting there, and New Japan Wrestling is on the TVs at the bar. Yeah. We're watching Wrestle Kingdom. You're on the DJ. It was such a cool moment.
That's a great place. Yeah, we just opened back up. It's Trader Todd's in Chicago. It's a karaoke bar. And my life's like an 80s movie because Ogre from Revenge of the Nerds, he's friends with the owner. So Ogre comes in, and, he's yelling about nerds. And then, we got people are singing Journey songs. And, things are obviously a little shut down right now. But, yeah, that was great. Did we do a shot of Malort? I feel like we did some Malort.
We did some Malort. You're the 4th or 5th person that tricked me into Malort. It was crazy.
Yeah, stuff's gross.
Because they were free. That's why.
Exactly. When I went to Tokyo, I went to Minoru Suzuki's shop, and I brought him a bottle of Malort. And he's like, oh, he's like, what's it taste like? And I'm like, it tastes like shit. And he goes, shit? I'm like, oh, man, I just stepped in it, man. Don't kill me. I'm like, yeah, but it's tough. It's tough. He's like, okay. Just got to put it to the side. So,
if you're ever in Chicago area, please ask for a shot of Malort. It is wonderful.
oh, yeah.
It will cleanse your soul. It'll cleanse something.
Ugh.
All right. Finally, from Lynn's, how is the Larcher and Lawrenson podcast doing?
It has its ups and downs. Like, we've been doing a podcast for, man, it's been like 10 years. And he's one of my best friends. We both trained together at Second City. And we decided to do a sports show like a couple years ago. Well, I hate baseball. Like, I loathe baseball. I don't understand it. I don't get why people stand around in the sun. Yeah. You too?
I am with you. I hate baseball.
What?
It's too slow. I'll go out and play baseball, but I'm not going to sit and watch baseball.
No, I don't. It's just, I don't get it. So, but Clark likes baseball. I obviously love football. And, over the years, I mean, he's become a father. And was that the Bengals?
Yeah, I'm a diehard.
So what about Andy Dalton? Not to go way off track here.
Right,
but,
let's do this. Let's do this now. So Andy Dalton's your guy. It's not Russell Wilson, so obviously that's a letdown. That said, he is horribly consistent, but the consistency is not of the above average level.
Yeah.
I've lived there for 12 years, and he'll get you to playoffs if you surround him with talent. He never won a game, so
he's not going to raise the talent level, which is it's what's stated. I mean,
he's going to play up to the level. He's an upgrade from Nick Foles. He's more consistent than Trubisky. Trubisky's got his highs, but Dalton's going to be more consistent. He's going to give you 3 touchdowns, 1 pick every game.
I know. As a fantasy football guy, when Dak Prescott went down last year, I built a lot of my year-long teams around stacks of Prescott and Cooper. And when he went down and Dalton went in, I got excited. I'm like, oh man, this is the week I'm gonna win the Millie Maker. I'm gonna pair Andy Dalton. Nobody's gonna play him with Michael Gallup.
He was garbage.
Statistically, he's brutal, and I'm just not excited at all.
Yeah, I get it. Listen, but you're coming from the high. I work with a Bears fan, and he's from Chicago. He lived in Lincoln Park. He went to DePaul. Is it DePaul?
Yeah.
He went to DePaul, and he's a diehard Bears fan. So we were talking about the exact same thing today. He said, "What about Andy Dalton?" And I said, "Brother, good luck."
Yeah, I mean, it's like signing Rusev. I mean, it's like AEW getting Rusev. It's the same comparison.
It's Drew Bledsoe. It's your average quarterback. Okay. Moving on, EFED podcast. Okay, we're back. That was our NFL moment of the week.
What was the question?
How is your Larcher and Lawrenson podcast doing?
Oh yeah, I went through that. It's good. And thank you, Lindsay, for asking. She's a wonderful human being. I just want to say that. Like, she moved to Chicago. She used to come to we had our improv shows. She would come to those, and I was in a hospital one time, and she shows up, like, just a good-hearted person, and just a real asset to e-wrestling. So, just want to give a shout out to her for that.
Shout out to Lynn's. Up next, at Studley from the SWA. Picture you and your biggest rival handler in a tag team of new characters. Would it work?
Yeah, it would. It would work.
You'd make it work.
It would work.
Up next is Andy Murray.
All right. Oh, Andy.
What's Duke Williams up to in 2021? You kind of answered that one already.
Yeah. Beach, sun, whiskey.
No mask.
No mask. No
fucks. Okay. Next question. Speaking of whiskey, how much whiskey have you drank since retiring? Well,
I mean, I work in a bar. I drink. It's not always whiskey. You know, I've kind of gotten into the mojito lifestyle. I've been doing a lot of mojitos, margaritas. I'm
There you
drinking
go.
a apple.
I just got really into margaritas. I just found margaritas.
Oh, so good, man. Wait
It's
till the
amazing.
summer.
Oh,
I drink about a bottle of Toki, Suntory Toki whiskey a week because I like highballs. I actually play Dungeons and Dragons now. That started I've never played that in my life. And then during the pandemic, somebody John Moorhead, who's been in the hobby and was a Fed head of mine at one point. He's the dungeon master, and we play. I mean, it's like on Skype like this, and so every week I go through at least a quarter of a bottle while playing, and then throughout the week I like to have a highball or two before I go to sleep. So
there
yeah,
you go.
about a bottle a week.
Nothing wrong with that. I like a little nightcap myself. I've had about 4 beers since we started recording.
Oh yeah.
If you ever come back, would it be with Duke Hoyt or a new Williams or a completely different character off of the Williams?
Well, like I said, anytime I go away from the Williams name, I fail horribly. There is kind of an interest in maybe like I can't write like a female character. Like, you know, that seems to be the way to go. Like you go with like a daughter of, but realistically, it wouldn't be honest. I wouldn't be able to write it properly. So like maybe a son of Hoyt definitely intrigues me. Like, what would he be? Would he be more like his grandfather? Would he be more like his father? Is he
Third
normal?
generation.
I mean, you know what I'd love to do? I'd love the third generation comes, and this guy's an absolute bore. Like, I would just write the dullest, like, role
Just
plays
Bob
ever.
Backlund.
Yeah, Bob, exactly. I would ask you to name all the presidents in order and awkward promos. It actually would be kind of funny to write, like, really awkward promos where you're actually writing it.
Classic-wrestling.com. Keep it in mind.
Yeah. Send me a link. I'm ready.
At Brock, what or why does the guest have a better radio voice than the interviewer? This son of a bitch.
Well, thank you. I do appreciate that. I was in radio for a couple years. That was what I wanted to get into, and I don't know. I just kind of stopped chasing it, and then went into Second City and tried acting, and now I'm on this show. So I think all paths led to the best place possible. And I think
That's right.
I think you have a better radio voice than I do. I feel like I always think everybody's voice is better, and I think that's just with their own voices. Everyone hates their voice, so
I've never judged a voice on the podcast. Well, that's not true. I've never judged, like, generally I don't judge voices. And then as soon as I started a podcast, everyone's like, oh, you've got this voice. Oh, this person has a great voice. And I'm just like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Let me tell you, you are like a saint. I wish like if I could talk to Hoyt Williams or God right now, I would ask for the ability not to be so judgmental, because when I'm listening to these podcasts, I pick apart every single word of everybody says, and like I signed up to the Torch and they got like 50 hosts, and like I can't stand any of them.
No,
like they finally fired that Bruce Mitchell guy. I couldn't, like the way he would talk on the podcast. You've been doing podcasting for 15 years. Learn how to do it. But you're a natural. You're a natural. You're like the Butch Reed of podcasting.
I appreciate that. The natural Butch Reed. That's right. No, I very much appreciate it. And same. I think your DJing skills are off the charts.
Thank you, buddy. I like playing music.
Up next, fuck you, Brock. Up next, what do you remember about 2001 Fed Wars, and why was it so shit?
I don't even remember it. Like, just in general, like the Federation's all warring?
Yes.
Yeah. I actually kind of found it interesting. Like, I always enjoyed, a little bit of rivalry, a little bit of... The problem was you could never... I mean, it was always the great concept. I think what everybody wanted was to be graded. Like, everybody wanted to be graded, including the federations. So... you had like 3 or 4 great federations, and you wanted ratings. Like, you legitimately, it was what was happening on television. It was happening in the real world. It was happening in the wrestling columns. So we all wanted ratings. We wanted somebody to rate us, but there was just so much drama because nobody could be nobody can be told they're not the best. And, and as soon as you were like, well, I don't want any part of this rating system. This is garbage.
Yeah. This is bullshit. Don't listen to those guys.
But I think the concept of like the wrestling wars was really cool, and federations competing. And I know as an e-wrestler, it was fun being able to be like, you know what? I could go down the street. They got good ratings, even though it's all garbage. Maybe I'll go to the company that has better ratings. And, you would either want to improve the ratings or you would, it's capitalism. I mean, that's really what I'm getting at.
Or you run to the big guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did a top 100 countdown of 2020 e-wrestling superstars.
Whew.
The drama. Oh boy.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Drama.
Oh, yeah. People get offended very easily. And
brother, it was fan vote. I had nothing to say, but they thought it was all me.
That's great. You probably lost a third of the listeners, all because of, something you were just trying to have fun with.
I'll be honest, we gained a whole ton of listeners from it. So let's keep moving on.
Better.
Thanks, guys.
I'm ready for the 2020 list.
Well, we're going next year. Why did you have to crush my dreams and murder me in Prime? Uh-oh.
Who did I murder in Prime?
This is Brock. I don't know what character he was in Prime.
Yeah, I don't remember. I wonder if I physically murdered him, because that's possible.
Or if you just butchered him in an EFET or in a role play.
I don't know. What can I tell you?
Brock, follow up with me, and I'll follow up with Al, and we'll get an answer for you, buddy.
Yeah, I should remember who that is. I don't remember who we had up.
Al, I'm going to send you an invite to our community Discord, and you get with Brock.
Nice.
Why did you have to crush my dreams? Oh, I just spread that one. Okay, moving on.
Crushed him
Lynn's. Crushed him twice. Lynn's, Phantom Booker, Argyle, and Seth are trapped on a deserted island with you. You have acquired an escape from the island, but can take only one of them with you. Who are you taking and why?
Wow. So Phantom Booker was Ron, who was like, he was my favorite fathead. Really, I really enjoyed, very controversial. I think he went out. I think it ended bad for him. But I really like the dude. And, but Ross is so Ross he was the head of he had the hosting of PTC. So the hosting was his. So he was the king and just overseeing everything, but he was so fair in trying to make everybody get along in this community and keep the community. And there were multiple times I should have been banned. And he saved my ass, which probably saved my interest in the hobby. And I got him and the other fella, Pete. They came to Chicago and I took them to Pequods. I don't know if they took you to Pequods. If they didn't, you really need to question your hosts.
No.
Well, you got cheated, man. Next time, come to Chicago.
I'll call you next time. Yep.
But the best pizza. So he came in from Australia because he was from Australia, and him and Pete were in here, and we went and we got Pequods, and I got to have a beer with him, and so I got to save Ross. Argyle. Who's the third one, just to make sure?
It was Lynn's, Phantom Booker, Argyle, and Seth.
Oh man, God. I mean, I'd hate leaving any of them. I hate leaving Lynn's. I mean, I've had beer with her, so yeah. God damn.
Who you taking?
It's got to be Ross. It's got to be Ross because he saved my ass.
Go with your gut.
He saved my ass.
His last and final question: why didn't you pick Lynn's? He already knew.
Amazing. Well, we got into it like a year ago, and so I think something political.
He's just saying that because he knows she's listening.
Yeah. These are tough questions. I mean, it just leaving people behind on an island, but who knows? Maybe they prosper. They build a casino there, and this becomes the hottest place in the world to visit. And then I'm screwed.
Them. Yeah.
I'm the asshole left them behind. Nobody's letting me into that casino.
I like how you turned that around. That was great. And that's all I got for you, Al. I appreciate you taking the time. Before I let you go, is there anybody else you want to plug, promote, put over? Anything else?
Well, there's the Larcher and Lawrenson podcast, which is absolutely a lot of fun. I have no idea. We're probably going to, it's like Seinfeld. I mean, we just talk about nothing, but we pretend like it's a sports show. So, I mean, we'll probably talk about this podcast on it because he's always curious about my e-wrestling. He met Lynn's, which kind of blew up my closeted e-wrestling career,
Yes.
because they're like, how do you know her? Well, I used to be in this hobby.
There was this time. Let me tell you a story.
I like to tell him I'm a multi-federation Hall of Famer. So
there you go.
He should be lucky to do a show with me. So yeah, at Larcher and Lawrenson, we do it on really it's like Walgreens. Anywhere you can find Walgreens, you can find this podcast.
Anywhere you find this podcast, you can find that podcast at Larcher and Lawrenson.
Yeah, we're also on Facebook, and I'm Larcher Than Life on Twitter. I mean, if you want to like wrestling and fantasy football, that's your stop. And that's it, really. I got nothing else to plug. Trader Todd's in Chicago. Go get a margarita.
Animal
Lort. There is a place called Mr. D's that this guy has the best steak sandwiches in Chicago, and he also has the best fries. And if you want the best hot dog in Chicago, you need to go to Gene and Jude's on
Yes,
Rebrand.
you do. Yes, you do.
Oh, you know the best hot dog, my friend.
Gene and Jude's is the best hot dog I've had in my life.
Amen. Yeah, good. You know, a good hot dog. I can end
there
on
it
that.
is.
I feel good.
I love that. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us this week on the EFED podcast interview series. Thanks to Al for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, brother.